Thank you, Dean Rowley. Thank you, Dr. Dong, Consul General Editor, Dr. Huang, graduates, distinguished guests, and family. It's a great honor to be up here speaking to you. I didn't realize that I would be given this award before I spoke. Maybe that's good because they probably wouldn't give it to me after I finished. But in all frankness, it's extremely gratifying and an honor for me to be here. I know how important an occasion this is. This is a big milestone in all of your lives, and it really marks significant achievement that you've done over the last almost 2 years. I went and got my MBA as a full-time student, and I know how hard that was, not having a job, not worrying about my family and being able to focus on my studies. So I can only imagine how difficult it is for you to try to do this concurrently, obviously while still building all the bonds that you do when you are in business school. But despite all that, despite all the hard work that you put in, I've got some really bad news for you. It's not just the economy. You guys are starting school knowing that the economy was rough, and hopefully that when you graduate it'll be better. But the first piece of bad news I have for you is that now you put yourself in debt. I don't know how much Dean Rowley charges for an MBA program or an MBA degree, but I know how much I paid. So congratulations on reaching 5, maybe 6 figures of debt. Good job. Bad news number 2. You all just significantly raised your opportunity costs, right? You're freshly minted MBAs, you're special, right? There are not many MBAs here in Vietnam. And as Dean Rowley said and Dr. Nguyen said, this is the premier program. You're graduates of the premier program here, and there's less than, or right around 400 of you. So you're a really treasured commodity. But at the same time, we were talking about entrepreneurship and leadership. Well, my bad news is that you significantly raise your opportunity costs. As an entrepreneur, you always have to weigh your risks and what you have sort of at risk versus what you have to gain in taking on a project. And that means maybe a startup business, but it's also, you can be entrepreneurs inside your companies. But the irony of getting an MBA is it makes you loss averse. What do I mean by that? Well, you've got your degree, you can get a very well-paying job, you can be, a senior manager at any number of organizations here in Vietnam, and your salary, I hope, will be pretty good. But that also means that if you ever take a risk and you decide that, hey, I'm going to drop everything and start a business, that's a big cost. And for many of you may have families already. You've got mortgages to pay. You have people to take care of. Those risks get harder and harder to take, especially when your salaries are higher. So congratulations for taking yourself out of the risk game. Bad news number 3. I think I've talked to most of your bosses. You're not getting raises on Monday. So the net present value, at least in the next couple of months and maybe in the next year, isn't going to be changing that much. But, I break the bad news to you first because there's a lot of good news. The first piece of good news is that you clearly value learning. What you've received in terms of formal learning as an MBA are great tools in a toolkit to do great things. In many ways, you guys have now accepted a burden and responsibility, as Consul General Bitter said. You are the symbol of what is Vietnam and American cooperation, especially in commercial activities. The University of Hawaii is a terrific institute. If anything, what a brilliant school to be an alumnus of. Because you know what? If there's an alumni event in Hawaii, trust me, you should go. But more than that, what I mean by just learning, you clearly are willing to take on debt. You're clearly willing to sacrifice your time and energy to learn. And that's something special. But what I ask you is, when you graduate, you must continue continue to take those steps. Learning is a lifelong task. And I'll tell you another thing, learning and leadership go together. You can't have one without the other. You know, great leaders are not only great learners, they're great teachers. And that's what you all have the capacity to do now. The great thing about modern business school education is that you have to teach each other. That's what the real workplace is like. Working together, working in groups. Even that part of the experience, beyond the formal learnings in finance or organizational behavior or marketing or ops, is that ability to work together. That will also serve you in spades. And like I said, and I think the dean also referred to this, is that you didn't do this alone. I'll tell you actually, I have to share something right now. I'm a little more nervous than usual speaking in front of a crowd today. Normally I don't have my wife sitting in the front row, because you know what's going to happen in about an hour and a half when we get home is I'm going to get critiqued on what I should or shouldn't have done, or what I could have said better. And it's tough to have someone you really trust, respect, and admire critique you. But again, I guess that's why you trust and admire them. But you too, in this room, I can see it in all your families and how proud they are. And your kids, you know, this is what you did this for. You know, you do this for the people around you. And they were always here to support you. And so I don't want you to forget that. You know, a big part of these MBA programs is to encourage not only leadership, but also entrepreneurship. And as I alluded to earlier, being an entrepreneur doesn't mean, you know, dropping out of school and starting a business or building some fancy new app. You know, being an entrepreneur means being a risk taker. You can be an entrepreneur in any organization. You can be it in a large corporation, a multinational. You could be it in a small company or a local village stop company. Or you can even be it in a social organization. You know, social entrepreneurship, that's a term now that gets thrown around quite a bit. And I love the term because, you know, actually I also think all entrepreneurs are social entrepreneurs. You know, why do you do what you do? You do it to have an impact. You do it to have an impact on the people around you. Starting with your coworkers, starting with your community, starting with your customers, right? We're all social entrepreneurs when we're entrepreneurs. So to speak with that, you know, I think like I told you before, being an entrepreneur is tough business. It's always easy to take sort of a safe route. All of you, like I said, you're in a great position that you'll have good earning power. You know, no matter what I said about putting yourself in debt, you know, the net present value of your MBA is positive, right? And that's because you can always get a very good job, and you're always going to be in demand, especially in a market like Vietnam. But being an entrepreneur is about being willing to take those risks, to understand and calculate what's at hand. And that's no easy task. And to be honest, you know, getting an MBA gives you a lot of tools, but doesn't give you the answer. You only find the answers with experience. And what I encourage you is try to enrich as many of your experiences as possible. That means trying to work on new projects. That means meeting new people, networking. You know, what you're going to find, and even just in your class, these linkages that you've made are significant. You know, I didn't realize the value of that. You know, before you go to business school, you say, oh, great, I'm going to get to network and I'm going to have these relationships. But it's an amorphous, unidentified value that you don't fully understand until you have it. And I can tell you, you know, particularly with my MBA graduate, you know, alumnus, I have a special bond with them because, you know, unlike maybe my college friends, who again, we went through a lot of things together, my MBA friends, we're trying to solve the same type of challenges and we're doing very similar work every day. So even now, 13, 14, 15 years out, I still call on them a lot. And thanks to technology, whether it's email, whether it's Skype, whether it's Facebook, you know, it's easier to stay in touch with them. So value these relationships that you have. You know, if I can be indulged a little bit, I was told I have like an hour and a half, right? That's right, I'm the last person that's going to prevent you from getting your degree, so deal with it. I'm not that much more experienced than many of you. And in fact, I'm honored to be here. Although my wife tells me I'm not that young anymore, I still like to think I'm a peer. And in that sense, I don't know if I have that much wisdom to impart, but I can share you sort of some of my experiences. I'm an extremely lucky person. One is I've always had access to great education. Growing up as an immigrant in America, having my family start over, I know it's not an easy thing. But likewise, I know all the families and all of you who grew up here in Vietnam, never easy times. We share that as a generation of young Vietnamese. But the good fortune that I always had is that I had access to great public schools that took me to the next step, a great undergraduate education. That took me to the next step, opportunity to do graduate learning. And then of course, it's all led me here. I'm sorry if you read my resume, it seems all over the place. But I promise you buy me a couple beers, I can give you a pretty interesting narrative of how I got here. But I won't get into that. The point is that I got here. And there was a lot of factors that got me here. Some luck, some preparation, but a lot of it is just the help of the people around me. I love my job. Being a venture capital investor, for me, is one of the greatest jobs in the world. I've had many turns as an entrepreneur, and as a venture capital investor, I get to do it many times over on an annual basis. And more importantly, I get to work with really energetic, smart, hardworking entrepreneurs, people like yourselves, and that's fantastic. And for me, why do I love it? It starts with, one, it's just extremely interesting work. Like I said, one of the principal, I guess I'll say, drives that an entrepreneur has is just a very simple question. Why can't things be better, right? Why can't this be done better? Why isn't this piece of technology better? You're never satisfied with the status quo. And I love that, right? That's our job as leaders, as managers, trying to figure out how to make that difference. And this past year, I've gotten very lucky. I've gotten the chance to become an entrepreneur again with McDonald's. A lot of my friends have given me a hard time, especially from the United States. McDonald's may not be as interesting a brand to many, but to me, it's my absolute favorite brand. It tends to surprise many people. They think I should be liking Porsches or Rolexes or something. Now, those brands mean nothing to me. McDonald's is about my childhood. It's about my first job. It's about learning what a great business is. Actually, I probably had the effect of being in Chicago near McDonald's headquarters. And at Kellogg, we studied a lot of cases about McDonald's because it's a fascinating business. But I got the bug, first front of the counter and then even behind the counter. And I love this business because of that very one thing. I guess I'll put it this way, it was a variation of the question I asked. I said that all entrepreneurs ask. More than 10 years ago when I was living in Illinois, KFC opened their first store there. It was pretty exciting for me, Trust me, as an American, I was always very self-conscious about being the ugly American, just wanting to eat hamburgers and pizzas and things like that. And trust me, I also love being in Hanoi because street food in Hanoi is awesome. I could get bánh cuốn or Jack Ha or whatever I want at any time. But there's still an American in me that loves fried chicken and Big Macs and hamburgers. And that was the genesis of that question. Why isn't McDonald's here? And that's when I submitted an application for McDonald's. I'm telling you this entrepreneurship story because I guess I'll just say it shows one quality I think all of you, it's important to have, it's just called persistence. I submitted a standard franchise application over the internet. I followed up with an email. They emailed me back very politely. But I guess I was kind of lucky. My U.S. home is still in Chicago, very near where McDonald's global headquarters are. And I was going home for the holidays. And so I used my Kellogg connections. Like I said before, you have a wide network as well, especially here in Asia. But for me, McDonald's being a quintessential Chicago company, plenty of Kellogg grads inside. And I networked my way to two of them. One of them who actually knew was in a different section, but graduated the same year I did. And I was very upfront with him, and I said, hey, I'm in Vietnam, love to be a franchisee for McDonald's here, but I have no way to get to Jim Cramer, the head of international franchise. Of course, they're very open. They said, hey, come on over. You know what, I'll take you over to his desk. I said, well, I think I should be a little more subtle than that. Why don't I'll call him first, and then I'll come see you guys. So when I called Jim Cramer, he said to me, he said, Henry, we got your application, I read it. Your background's very interesting, but we're not ready for Vietnam. And we won't be for years, so there's no point in us meeting today. So I thought that was a polite way to give me the Heisman, as they say, to reject me politely. But I couldn't take no for an answer, so I still went out to their headquarters in Oak Brook. After a very nice lunch with those two alumnus, I said, hey, can I call Jim Cramer from your phone? So it's an internal phone call. And I did. I picked up the phone. I said, hi, Jim, this is Henry. I'm in the campus office building. Can I just drop by your desk and say hello? I could hear him sigh audibly, like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy's actually here. So he didn't want to know, I think he didn't even want me to know where he sat. So he said, okay, you know what, meet me in the lobby. Thankfully, he took me for a cup of coffee. I think he intended to spend 5 minutes with me. But I found a mutual connection in terms of the love of the Chicago White Sox baseball team. So thankfully, that turned into a 90-minute conversation. And at the end of that meeting, he said to me, he's like, Henry, you know what? It's very nice meeting you. And you're right, it's nice to put a person and a face to this application, but being very sincere with you, we're years away from coming to Vietnam. I said, well, that's all well and good, Jim. If you don't mind, every quarter I'm going to write you. Every quarter I'm just going to write you a little update about what's happening in Vietnam, economically, socially, politically, what's KFC doing, what's Lotteria doing. And you can read it, you can chuck it, you can ignore it, or you can tell me to stop. But I promise you I'll do it every quarter. He just looked at me and goes, Henry, you don't need to do that. I appreciate your enthusiasm. I said, no, Jim, I'm going to do it. And I did. I went home, my Outlook calendar, right, set quarterly, January 1st, April 1st, July 1st, October 1st, write Jim Cramer. I did that religiously for 9 years. It's funny, he eventually told me, he said, senior executives at McDonald's had a nickname for me. They called me the stalker. When he told me that, I said, Jim, I'm a native English speaker. I understand that's not very positive. But I tell you that story because, it's one of the great qualities of an entrepreneur that I always admire in others, and I've learned from others, and to put it for myself, it's just the power of persistence. If you believe, and you really believe in something, first of all, there will be a natural expression in everything you do. But secondly, you just have to have a vision that something's going to happen. And quite honestly, when I did that, I wasn't sure that was ever going to happen. And as the years rolled by, and then I realized that the McDonald's CEO was the last roadblock to doing this, I wasn't even sure that it was ever going to happen until he retired. But I tell you this story because I guess it goes to sort of one of three kind of values or virtues, if you will, that I believe make for a great entrepreneur, having a great career, and having a great work life. And maybe this is what I'll leave you with. A lot of people call that drive, like I told you, my drive to try to get McDonald's to Vietnam. You can call it passion, you can call it ambition, you can call it vision, but fundamentally I really like the word drive, right? Drive. What gets you out of bed in the morning? You gotta have that to be successful. It's tough. It's tough when you have kids or you have family and other responsibilities. You get out of bed every morning. Maybe you've got a boss or a teammate you don't like, but you still gotta push through. You gotta have that drive and persistence. That quality is extremely important. And how you find it, whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic, it's extremely important to keep for all your life. Because that's that drive that'll keep you wanting to learn, and wanting to grow, etc. Second factor that I'll call, or virtue I'll call, that's important in having a very meaningful and successful work career is really producing results you can be proud of. By that I mean, sometimes it's simply said, if everything that you did showed up on the front pages of, Nguyen or the New York Times, would you be proud of the story that told? Many of you, like I said, will have many opportunities to create wealth, to create success and be successful in whatever metric or measurement that you want to have. But will you be proud of it? Would you feel that, hey, that's my accomplishment? That's extremely important. Because if you don't have that, if you don't have that pride in your work and the results of your work, it's hard to sustain it. It's hard to maintain whatever drive that you have. But I can tell you this, even just a drive for wealth, it won't sustain. You got to find that really internal motor. That's really important. And then the third thing that for me actually ends up being the most important. You have to be able to put yourself in a position where you get to work with people you trust, you respect, and you admire. Right? You're going to learn the most from the people around you. I'm sure these last 2 years have taught you that much. You got to put yourself in a position where you are an integral cog in a team, in a machine that works. When you have all three of these factors, particularly the people part, I love my job also because every day I go to work and I work with some fantastic people. Right? And I'm lucky too because, I'm one of the principals in most of the businesses that I participate in. So still, I get to make the call. That's why it's good to strive to be a leader of an organization because that's your vision, that's your direction to try to create a culture and get the right people around you. Because that, to me, matters more than anything else. And ultimately, all that adds up to what? Making a real impact, making a difference. Kind of all what I said in the beginning. That's what we're here for, right? The wonderful thing about being in Vietnam, about being part of this generation, and you guys are in the next 25, 30 years, where Vietnam goes today to what I believe will be a first world economy, maybe a top 10 global economy, is on your backs. That responsibility, if you think about it in the big picture, is huge, but you don't have to. If you have the three factors that I told you about before, in terms of drive, in terms of results creating results you can be proud of, doing with people that you love, trust, and admire, you're going to get there. You are Vietnam's golden generation. You're going to make this happen in your lifetime. Watching your kids grow up, Vietnam's going to change. It's a wonderful time to be here because this is going to be a time of tremendous growth. It's going to be a time of tremendous change, economically, socially, and even politically. And all of that relies on your leadership. And I love being here. I love being around peers like yourselves. It's a wonderful opportunity ahead of you. And you should be very proud of this milestone, but just know that it's an early marker in a long marathon. Right? This is very early in the race. Your success is going to depend on you maintaining that drive, continuing to produce results that you're proud of, and doing it with people that you really trust and admire. And that's the words I'll leave you with. In the end, all of you, in terms of the big picture, are going to contribute to it. But don't forget, it's the little care of, first of all, yourself, taking care of your family, taking care of your loved ones, your friends, your colleagues. That's what's going to energize you to do bigger things. So congratulations, and thank you for this award. Thank you for having me here. And I won't take my full 90 minutes. So congratulations.